Hello, everybody, and welcome to the virtual chapter for April 2023. What an exciting night we have tonight. And as has already been said in our pre-talk here, such beautiful weather all over the country. I think that is relatively true. I hope for everybody. We've had some bad stuff going on for the last several weeks. So it's really kind of nice. We have a couple announcements we need to make here at the beginning. We are all excited about the Hypno Expo, of course, which is coming up on May 19th through the 21st, moving to Mastery, May 19th through the 21st here in Orlando, Florida, beautiful Orlando, Florida. And there are some pre and post conference programs in the days just before and just after that weekend as well. So more information, of course, is available at the iact.org website or imdha.com website. And you can find out all about it. So if you haven't already made your plans to come and join us in Orlando, please get those daytimers out. If anyone still has a daytimer, and we hope you'll be able to come and see us. What's going on in your neck of the woods, Karen?
Oh, it's warming up. Spring has sprung, at least for the next 3 days, and then we go back to a little chillier. But oh, it's lovely here. Things are heating up for the IACT IMDHA conference. I'm getting so excited about being there. I've got a couple of great things I'm going to present during the conference and a 2-day workshop, pre-conference workshop on metaphor magic. I hope that you join me there. That's the 16th and 17th, just ahead of the conference.
Mhm.
And so plans are underway. I've booked the room, I've booked the flight. I'm set to go. All that's left to do is shopping for new outfits.
All right. And as some wise women said only a couple of decades ago, I am so excited I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, Karen, and I think I like it.
I think I
So
like it too.
yeah, it's going to be great. And of course the venue is lovely. If those of you who were here last year already know, I was out there again just a couple of weeks ago to have a look at the place once more. And hey, we're already. Oh, and you know what? I'm going Friday. I'm going out there on Thursday as well, just to have breakfast at a place across the street from the hotel called Flapjack Johnny's that opened since the last time we were there, but used to have a branch somewhere that Michael and I went to quite often, and it was just lovely, lovely, best pancakes in the world. And so, we've got
Well,
to,
there's something to look forward to too, because we went to a lot of restaurants just across the street. That'll be fun.
yeah, yeah,
That's fun. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be.
yes, indeed. So,
So we have Kelli von Heydekampf coming up just ahead, but you know what? We've got something very special tonight. Unless you have other announcements, Michael, would you like to take it away? Because Michael has a feature for us tonight.
oh, I'd like to just share some stuff. I want to keep it a little casualer than a formal feature. And I was just thinking over the last couple of days, there's so many different things that we could talk about. I will say, for a moment, I had considered the idea of just creating a discussion here and talking to you guys who are members of our hypnosis community and finding out what is it that what is it that you need? What is it that you can help us with, that we can help you with? If there's anything in particular that you'd like to see on the chapter, we'd love to hear from you about that. So, but please feel free to drop us a note or something and let us know anything like that, so we can pay attention to it. We're always guessing and hoping that we know what it is that you want. And I'll tell you, we started the virtual chapter to in a sort of indirect way. The virtual chapter is a spin-off of my local first Monday of the month meeting that I have here in Orlando. And at some point, IACT and IMDHA wanted me to run a chapter here. And they, they asked me if I would, and I said no, politely, because I already had my thing going on my first Monday night. And they said, well, we could make that a chapter as well, designate that as a chapter. And so I thought that was good. And in fact, I thought it would bring me more people to first Monday night. But in fact, what happened is no more people came, and so we decided that we would just stretch it out a little bit bigger. And I started doing my first Monday night as for a while as a teleconference. And just because it's history, I might as well let you know. So as a teleconference, what I discovered was, well, we still really didn't get very many more people, but we did get some people from outside of the area, and my first Monday night program that had been a small community of people that was gathering together every month over a period of literally for over 10 years prior to that, uh, started showing up on first Monday night to watch me do a radio show. And it really damaged that lovely, close group that we have had. So finally, what we did was we separated them apart. First Monday night is still first Monday. It's a great thing if you're ever in Orlando, do come, to that. And second Tuesday became the virtual chapter once Zoom kicked in and everything else. And then it was less than a year after that got started that I ran into and you know what do I want to say, latched onto, if you will, the lovely and talented Karen Hand, as you all know, who has contributed so much to this meeting. So once again, Karen, I have to thank you almost every time I talk, just because I really feel that strongly about it. But we have a little bit of time here, about 20 minutes or so before the primary speaker, maybe a little less than that, if because I'm sure that we can make that transition. But I thought I would just share with you one really sort of basic piece, basic and yet relatively unknown piece of neurolinguistic programming, just a lovely little technique that I have found really helpful through the years, and that some of you may find some use for, and you may want to use it with your clients as well. And it's called, now there's something really strange about the name of this technique, because it's called the failure to feedback strategy. And the reason that there's something really strange about that name is that NLP has a series of presuppositions that are at the base of the whole field, right? And one of those presuppositions is that there is no such thing as failure, only feedback. And yet, even though it doesn't exist, we have a strategy to help respond to failure. And what I would say is that, so you do know that's presupposition, right? You've all heard this. There is no such thing as failure, only feedback. There are 100 ways to talk about this. That is, I would say that failure, one of the great sayings that I like a lot, they say failure is just success that stopped too soon. That, as a matter of fact, one of the prerequisites of failure is that you stop, right? You haven't failed until you have quit. So otherwise, we're either in action towards the pursuit of some goal, or or we gave it up. So there is an emotional experience I think that people have sometimes when they try to do something and it just really goes amiss. And what we really want to do is to be able to learn from those experiences and incorporate that learning so that we can continue to make adjustments. I mentioned when we were counting back from 5. Richard Bandler, by the way, often used to do inductions by saying, "And now I'd like to begin by counting back from 1, counting down from 1." And then there would be a long pause, and once people were really confused, he would just say, "That's right. Close your eyes, sleep." It's a nice way to do an induction. So when we were counting back from 5, I was reminded that I am here on the Florida, not so far from the Space Coast, just over the way. And I wonder if it occurs to you that every time a rocket is launched, it is off course. 99% of the journey, it is off course. And what happens is that there's a calibrating mechanism in the rocket that sort of tests for where am I supposed to be now, and discovers that it's not there, and makes an adjustment. And it continues and it tests again and makes an adjustment, and tests again and makes an adjustment. This is the thing about how we learn and how we grow, how we actually come to find excellence in anything is we pursue it. And each time we engage in it, we learn a little bit more. We keep making more and more adjustments. So this notion of no failure, only feedback is really a useful frame to hold in the first place. But there are times when something that we've tried to do really goes south, and you have this emotional experience of, oh my God, I have really screwed this up, right? So in order to show you how to use this strategy, because it's about pulling out of that emotion and moving from that emotional place to a place where you can, in fact, incorporate useful feedback going forward with regard to whatever the thing is. So, so one of the prerequisites to understanding it, and it's something that I think most people know about from NLP, so I'm going to give you the quickest lesson in the world, but you know about this notion of representational systems. That is, we see things, we hear things, we feel things. We have these three primary representational systems, and we also taste and feel things, as well. So these are the inputs into the operating system. That NLP in the earliest days of NLP started publishing some research that had to do with eye accessing and the movement of a person's eyes when they were processing information. And so just to remind you, up is visual, ear level, curiously, right, is auditory. And then down below is where feelings are. And sometimes there's this place down and to the left where an area that's referred to as auditory digital. And it's different between an auditory memory, where you recall something that you've heard said, or an auditory construction where you imagine something. It's that inner narrator that we might have going on as we sort of walk through the world. I don't know why I think of this, but the example that I often give is if I'm walking down the street on one side of Edgewater Drive by my office, and I see a woman walking up the street on the other side wearing a yellow dress and with a bright green handbag, and it isn't Easter. So some part of me says, I wonder why she decided to dress like that before she came out this morning, right? So if you have a narrator in your head, that's what we're talking about when we refer to auditory digital. And if you notice a client looking down into their left, there's a good possibility that what's happening there is that they're talking to themselves. So here's this auditory digital. I'm looking down into my left. I appreciate from where you are, you got to switch it for yourself. In fact, I'm gonna pull up this little chart here for a second so that you can see it. This, yes, it is. So right now, this is as you look at this screen, you can see visual memory, which is up and to the left, okay, as you use your eyes. So if it were a client facing you, of course, this would be turned the other way, you understand. But if you are accessing your visual memory, you're probably looking up and to the left. Now, again, I don't want to overemphasize. I think NLP gets misrepresented sometimes by these huge generalizations. What we would say is these are, in fact, huge generalizations, but they tend to be pretty typical. And occasionally, some people are wired a little bit differently and have this thing completely turned around. But typically, memory is on the left. I like that because it's really easy for me to remember, because actually memory is what's left over after something has happened, right? So memory to the left and construction or creativity to the right, right? So if I were to ask you to remember something that you saw earlier today, just remember your mother's face. Even doesn't have to be today. Remember your mother's face. Be likely to look up and to the left in order to do that. If I were to ask you to think about what your mother would look like if she had pink hair, unless of course your mother has had pink hair, you'd have to sort of look up and to the right and to access your creative visual arena in order to develop that image. So if you're remembering something that you've heard in the past, you tend to look over and to the left. If you're imagining something you've never heard before, like the sound of the Star-Spangled Banner played on kazoos, that's probably going to be over and to your right. And then again, kinesthetics are down and to the right, or they're all over the place. So now, if you have an experience, I've got to keep watching this. Yeah, watch the clock. If you have an experience where you've been trying to do something and it has not gone the way that you wanted to, and you are emotionally racked by the experience. So you're feeling something that we would call failure. What I want to point out to you is that is what NLP folks would refer to as a synesthesia. It isn't that you just got sort of a picture in your mind of something that didn't go the way that you wanted. In fact, quite likely, you've got a picture in your mind, you've got words in your head, and the things that you say to yourself about what happened, maybe something that you heard from somebody else, but all of these things going on at the same time. And so the experience becomes overwhelming, right? It's a large experience. So the simple approach to this, I wonder if I need to leave this graph. I think that I don't. I'd rather be able to get back on the screen. And I'll remind you where these things are again in a moment. So let's say that I've had this devastating emotional experience and all of this stuff is going on at one time. Well, a well-trained NLP practitioner who has learned this technique at least would suggest that I break the synesthesia apart, that I break it into its appropriate components. So one of those components is that there is a visual memory. I had this experience, and when I think about it, I get this picture in my head and I see it going wrong, and all the stuff associated with that. So there's this image. There's also the words maybe of somebody being critical. Maybe it's my own an internal critic. Maybe it's the sound of my mother's voice. Whatever it is, it's going, wah, 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 saying a whole bunch of things that I really don't want to hear, and most likely in a tone that is less than pleasant. And there is, this emotional feeling down below it, as well as my own internal narrator criticizing myself for having these feelings and having had this experience as well. So that's a whole lot of stuff to be processing at the same time. So the idea is to take that experience, to just stop, to take a few breaths, get as centered as one might, while you're experiencing that. But to begin to separate out those things and to just look first at the picture and notice what you see. And imagine, if you could, that you could somehow wrap it up in a magical bubble and you could just park it up there into the left, inside a bubble. In fact, it's funny, I realized in my mind, my own submodalities, it's like a pink bubble from bubble gum, just encapsulating this thing and holding it up there. Now I'm shielded from it. That's great. So now I can pay attention to the words that are over here and what am I hearing from over here? And what I'm hearing from over here may be particularly unpleasant, maybe particularly harsh. But I am reminded of some of you are old enough to remember a fellow named Leo Buscaglia. Do you know this guy? He taught a course in love at Harvard or somewhere like that, some major university. And he used to do these PBS things from time to time, and he was delightful. He was rather ethnic Italian, bouncy sort of fella. And I remember him talking about his Italian mama. So, and how she could really, if she was really giving you hell, you knew just how much she loved you because of it, because of the passion behind it. Now, that's an interesting thing. So I can listen to this voice and I can notice what it's doing. But I can understand that somehow behind that voice, there is a message that voice really wants me to get because it cares about me. And so if I stop and I listen with those special ears, that is not just listening for the words, but listening for the message that's coming from this loving tirade inside of me. Wouldn't be that worked up, would he or she, if they didn't care about me? So I listen underneath all of that to what's the message, and the message might be, depending on what the particular criticism, I haven't even mentioned any specific incident, but the message might be something like, you should have been better prepared, and there's some important things you needed to take care of first, and why didn't you do that, et cetera, et cetera. So I hear that. And I recognize that it's an important message about being prepared. So I say, I'd like to keep that message. I don't want to lose that. That's going to be of some value for me. So I begin to change the way that it sounds so that it isn't so harsh, so that it isn't so bad. And I actually move it over to my right side. So now it becomes an auditory construction. How do I want this message that was coming through so harshly to be conveyed? And I recreate it and I put it over here on my right. Okay. I also notice what the self-dialogue is and how is that generated in much the same way. How what would be a better way for me to give whatever that message is to myself? Maybe that message has been something like, you shouldn't try things like this because they never work out. They never, what self-talk is like, right? So if in fact that part that was generating that, why does your self-talk give you such a bad time, by the way? What do you suppose? Because it really doesn't want you to experience failure. It really doesn't want you to feel bad. It really is there in a weird way to support you by talking you out of taking risks that could lead to this. Okay. But isn't it nice to know that there's an internal part of me that really supports the process? And so I'm going to take that message and I'm going to move it down here. I'm just going to move it over to the right, along where this other is, so that I've got some voices over here that are giving me positive auditory feedback, reminding me what I might do differently next time. Okay. And then finally, I'm going to come back up to this picture, this one that's been in the bubble here, where I saw everything going wrong. And I'm going to look at the picture and I'm going to ask myself, if this picture were a loving teacher, what is the message that it is there to convey to me? I'm going to look up and to my right and I'm going to develop an image that makes adjustments to what I saw in the picture and that incorporates the information that I got from these critical voices that now are offering me some positive feedback. So developing a new picture of the whole thing where I am in fact better prepared, where I do feel more confident, or again, whatever these things were about, build all of that into this image that's up here and to my right. My nice guiding image. And once you've got that, you want to dress it up with some modalities and stuff, so just to make sure you understand what I mean, if the picture isn't exciting or inspiring, you might ask yourself, how would it need to be different in order to really inspire me? It may be that it needs to be a little bit brighter. It may be that it needs to be a little bit bigger. It may be that the content of the picture needs to be adjusted in some way. And the interesting thing is, while you're making that adjustment, you don't even have to know consciously that you're using the strategy already. So adjust the picture until it's what you really want it to be. And then you have a lovely option. Now, you guys are hypnotists, or at least most of you are hypnotists. So I wonder, as hypnotists, if I suggest to you that once you have created that compelling future just the way that you wanted it to be, incorporating the feedback that became available to you through this process, what would it be like then for you to step into that picture and actually allow yourself to have an associated experience of being there now and feeling the satisfaction that comes from having done it now in that new way? It's an interesting thing. So that's the simple way, is simply the association. Or the other way, which is one of the ways that I kind of like a lot in order to really get it in there. I think that one of the things that I think NLP and hypnosis do is they go one step beyond cognitive behavioral therapy. That is, they take the important step that says, look, we've considered that there might be a new way to experience this thing. So now, how about if we use some kind of a technique or some kind of a method to integrate that so that in fact it happens automatically in the future and that you do have different thoughts in that context? So for me, I think that the best way to do that is to use a variation of the swish pattern, where you ask yourself, when is it that I want to be reminded that this vision is something that's available to me? What would be the triggers in the world that would tell me it's time to access this? And one of them would be that feeling of failure or incompetency or low self-esteem or whatever it is, if you can identify a specific feeling. Imagine feeling that feeling and taking that feeling then and projecting it out of your body. Some people, by the way, don't quite understand that you can do this. I've got a shortcut for you. A lovely book by what's his name? What's his name? I can't remember. Oh, Hugh Prather, a book called The Book of Games. Hugh Prather suggested that we be agents of blessing, secret agents of blessing, and that we walk through the world sending blessings to the people around us without them seeing that we're doing it. That was an interesting idea to try this experiment and to just notice what it feels like to generate those good feelings and to create within you the sense of projecting them to another place, to another person. So in the same way, you can take this unwanted feeling, this low self-esteem, for example, or internally critic, sense of failure, whatever it is, send it off into the distance, and then draw from the distance back to you that image of this change being successfully accomplished. So this goes away, and this comes in. As soon as you feel the unwanted feeling, as soon as it's uncomfortable, send it away and bring in the good feeling and hold it until you can feel the good feelings. Hold the picture until you can feel the good feelings. Then blank the screen out and repeat it again and again. And you'll be teaching your brain that whenever I begin to feel, just begin to feel this unwanted state, there's somewhere else that my brain can go, that it can learn to go automatically if you use the process to automate it. And there's the end of the feeling of failure. So there we go. In 15 minutes, once again, the failure to feedback technique, really sort of developed, by the way, in the NLP community. For those of you who know the cast of characters by Robert Dilts out at UC Santa Cruz, and it appears in one or two of his books, I believe, as well as the online encyclopedia of NLP that Robert has created. By the way, if you don't know about that, look it up. The Encyclopedia of NLP online, you can, it's everything, and it continues to expand, and you can download to your own PC up to like 20, there is a limit, like 25 pages a day. So rather than selling this it's a massive thing, but you can find anything that you want there. So so go give it a look sometime. And with that, are you still with us, Karen?
I am definitely still with you. That was lovely, Michael. Thank you very much. What a great thing to share. And, I think these features are kind of becoming the Cliff's Notes to hypnosis, right? Tune in here, get a quick technique, some new quick idea, and add it to the repertoire. Kind of like it. So thank you very much, Michael. That was lovely. It is time now for us to really look at resilience. I'm about to introduce you to a really, really wonderful hypnotist, one of my favorite people, and she's such a joy to watch. Now, I'll tip you off. She's had some improv classes, so she's really quick on her feet. She's really entertaining, and she's really good, so you're going to love that. We're going to let Kelli von Heydekampf tell you in just a moment how she got into hypnosis, that journey. But before we get there, I think you'll find some of this really interesting. She lives in Minnesota. She actually likes their winters. She walks her two dogs. Her cat, not such a fan of the winters. She's been married for almost 30 years. Have you crossed the 30-year threshold yet, Kelli?
Not yet, next year.
Not quite. Getting there. She has 3 adult, wonderful daughters, young adult daughters, by the way. And she is a very spiritual person. In fact, she leads an interactive interfaith service on Sunday mornings. She would never turn the radio if a Prince song is on. Kind of regrets never going to Paisley Park when he was alive. You get a big thumbs up from Michael. So when we talk about purple, guess what? She's not thinking Jason Lynette. She's not thinking Milton Erickson. She's thinking Purple Rain, Prince, whatever. That's right. Her family is bilingual in German. Incidentally, she roots for Germany in the World Cup. She's done the improv classes. She loves to perform. She describes herself this way. Check this out. Pragmatic yet intuitive, goal-oriented yet creative, an action taker yet discerning, direct yet compassionate, and overall, someone who really desires to show up for life in a big way. Michael and I can both attest to that, because when we were at a Greek restaurant in Orlando, was it last month before, and dinner was being served and suddenly dancing on the tables began, you'll never guess who started, instigated everybody getting up on chairs and then dancing on the tables. Kelli von Heydekampf. She shows up for life in a big way. So we've gotten into a little bit about your personal stuff, Kelly, your personality, but you also took a journey into hypnosis. It kind of started before you took your start in your training to begin with. But tell
Mhm.
us about how you got there and how you decided in a very tricky kind of way to get into hypnosis.
Well, I consider myself to be a very good wife. And so when my husband was talking about having sleep issues, and I was browsing through our community college um, offerings, I came across a 2-part workshop on self hypnosis and thought, oh, I'm going to sign up my husband for this workshop and send him off to self hypnotize himself into better sleep. And he's German, so he's very yeah, he's very analytical. He's very skeptical of new things. So when he went there, the workshop was 3 hours long, and I thought either he's going to be back in 15 minutes and I'm going to know it was nothing, but he didn't come back. He stayed for the whole thing. And I thought, well, now I'm intrigued. Now I have to know what's going on. So he said, it was amazing. And I started reading through his worksheets and I saw all of these affirming suggestions. And I was reading this and I was like, this is hypnosis. This is affirmative prayer. I've been doing this for years. So I was intrigued, and he could not attend the second half of the workshop. So I called the trainer and asked if I could attend, and she said yes. And she had just started a certification program, and I signed up for it out of pure personal interest. And the deeper I got into it, the more I found my calling, the more I realized the universe was kind of giving me a little wrapped box that said, go be awesome. So never intended to open my private practice, never intended to pursue this. But sometimes we get a calling that we just can't say no to.
I can definitely attest to your awesomeness. I
Well, thank you.
attended her adaptive resilience seminar recently and absolutely said, we have to bring this stuff to the chapter. First of all, it can go out there to hypnotists. Hypnotists should see it, NLPers should see it, coaches should see it, teachers should see it. But the general public got to see this too. That's the way I posted it on Facebook, was this is for everybody, because adaptive resilience, going beyond suck it up, right? How do you do that, Kelly? What does that mean, really?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of us would congratulate ourselves for our inner resilience. And when I first heard about this adaptive resilience, it was at a Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden 2-day workshop. So we spent 2 days talking about nothing but resilience. So you can imagine the depth that we got into it. And I really wanted to go to that conference because every single client who comes into my office, I talk to them about resilience. I'm going to back up just a little bit, because one of the things that I now realize as a parent that I wish I had known before I left the hospital, I wish someone would have said to me, your job is not to make your children happy. That is not your responsibility. I wish to God someone would have said that. And I wish someone would have followed it up with, your job is to make sure that your children know that they are resilient, that they're going to be okay, that life is going to happen and things are going to disappoint them and they're going to struggle and have obstacles, and everything they need to get through those struggles is already within them. And if I had known that message, because that is a message of adaptive resilience, I would have parented, and I think I did a pretty good job parenting, but that is the one thing, the one piece of advice that I would give any new parent your job is to allow your children their experiences, and you may need to be the person to point out their resilience, that they're going to be okay. And when I look back to my own upbringing, I was a child of the 70s, it was go out. Your parents didn't know where we were. You just went out and played and did stupid stuff and figured out life and got into trouble and figured out how to get out of trouble. And we learned a lot of ways to be creative and to problem solve, but there was an aspect of that didn't really allow for the emotional intelligence side of resilience. And I think probably many people can attest to that, the suck it up generations are the generations that did have the freedom to just go out and figure stuff out, but there was no one walking with us to kind of break down the emotional side of this. So I love the technique that Michael just introduced, because there's no failure, only feedback. What is that? That's resilience. That is understanding that, stuff is going to happen and you're going to be okay. And that there's no failure speaks to that emotional intelligence that most of us weren't even aware, like loving teacher, internal dialogue, like what is that? But when you break it down like Michael did, it makes perfect sense. And so this adaptive resilience, I love when serendipity happens, and I'm just a huge believer that it always happens, because Michael kicked us off with, what if that voice, what if that person, what if that visual up there, what if I turned it into a loving teacher? And when we have a client coming into our office, that's really ultimately what we are leading them towards. Their own loving teacher. And throughout my talk, I'm a huge believer in formulating these kinds of things and how it benefits the clients, but also how do we use it in our own lives? So in what ways do we need to become our own loving teachers? And so when you're listening to this, I really invite you to listen to it from the aspect of how to use it with clients, and in particularly how to use it in your business life, just because we're here in this combined experience where we can utilize this and ask questions. So I know this is conversational, Karen, so I don't know how you typically do questions, but if you'd like to say a word about that, please do.
I won't interrupt you at all. There's no need to, but if we have something, we will jump in. I don't know if Michael has a question or not. What I do want to say is that I think that this stuff is so, so, so important. You said something that I heard, Kelly, that I teach now every single client. I've written about it. I've written about it on Facebook. I featured it in my Hypno Tip newsletter at the first of the month. Embracing or accepting reality.
Yes.
Anybody, do you mind if I ask the room, Kelly, anybody know the difference between accepting and embracing reality? Anybody have an idea? Show of hands. Who in the room accepts reality? Michael, okay, there we go. Who in the room embraces reality? Well, let me tell you something. I definitely do now, because I learned something really important about this. So break it down for us, Kelly.
Yes. So first off, we as hypnotists often say, everything is hypnosis. You can use anything and everything. And on my intake form, and we will get back to the embracing in just a moment. On my intake form, one of the questions I have is, please describe your ideal place to relax. And I would say more than half of my clients always say beach. some sort of beach scenario. Water, turquoise water, palm tree, just the right temperature, perfect sun, all that. So I went to YouTube and I found this beautiful video, and it's, I think, 10 hours. And it's just, it's a front shot of a palm tree, and the water is just super gentle. You can hear the waves just a little bit. You can hear a couple birds, and you can hear the wind. And I just have that playing on my screen when people come in. And one day we were talking about anxiety, and this is talking about resilience is so important, because when you ask most people, if you weren't experiencing anxiety, what would you be experiencing? Now that question throws a lot of people. We know that because we know people know what they don't want. People don't know what they want. And they sit there and they're like, huh? And they kind of go, calm? And then I have to say, is that a question or an answer? What is it? And I say, calm is a good thing, except that you're telling me that you've got some challenges to deal with and some obstacles to deal with. So is it realistic to think that you're going to be calm in those situations? And it's really not. So clients really gravitate to this idea of resilience. And getting back to the video, I just asked them to look at the palm tree. Now, this palm tree that is front and center on the video grows crooked out of the ground. It literally grows like this. And in the background, the other palm trees are all more upright. So I say, what do you notice about that palm tree? And they all say, well, it's crooked. And I say, oh, interesting. Would you say that that crooked palm tree is any less of an expression of a palm tree? No, it's still a palm tree. Oh. So despite whatever environmental circumstances and factors this palm tree had to overcome, it still had the intelligence to figure out how to be its fullest expression of a palm tree. Yes. And then I asked them if they would consider that a form of resilience. And everybody says yes. And then I asked them, if a palm tree is resilient, don't you think you might be a little resilient? And I am fascinated how many people have forgotten they are resilient. We don't talk about this stuff. We talk about anxiety all the time, though. It is a norm. Our young people just expect to have anxiety. That's how off course we have gotten. And so you have a unique opportunity to really start bringing in this idea of resilience. How do I know you're resilient? I asked them that. How do I know that you are resilient? Life is resilient. Life automatically has resilience coded into it. That's the beauty of this. You don't have to go to a store to buy it, to download it. You don't have to do something special. You don't have to wait for magic fairy dust. You come equipped with resilience. All the resilience you will ever need in your lifetime is already available to you. People appreciate having these things pointed out to them. So there are 4 aspects that play into adaptive resilience that goes beyond just the suck it up. Because the suck it up resilience, I would say, based on what we've already talked about with Michael, includes a whole lot of self-doubt and a whole lot of feeling like we failed. And it's not until we get far enough in advance and can look back with hindsight that we might be able to look back and say, you know what, actually I did okay. But when we're going through it, we don't really feel like we're doing okay. We just kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. So this idea of adaptive resilience, there's an acronym that I coined for it, and it is the acronym of AREA. And the first letter of that, of course, is A. And that A is for awareness. And it is the unique human gift of our awareness. Change doesn't happen unless we're aware, unless we're aware that there's a problem, unless we become aware of a solution. Until we are on some level aware, change won't happen. And with this awareness, it is the very thing that allows us to understand that we can adapt and change, that we have these capacities to adapt and change. This is fundamentally it's such an important piece of information, because I think our clients are there because they don't think they can change. They've tried everything. That's why they're in our offices. They don't understand that this is an actual possibility. And one of the things that I love about our work is that we get to be the people who say, you know what, all that stuff about change being taken forever and being arduous and hard, and you got to keep the eye on the ball all the time, you got to pay attention to it. Forget it. Change happens in an instant. Change happens in an instant. And people have a really hard time with that. I'm going to leave that right there. We can come back to that and dive into it a little bit deeper later on. But that first letter in the acronym, awareness that allows us to adapt. The R is for remain in critical threshold. Now, Greg Braden talked a long time about this resilience curve and how there's an aspect of when you're dealing with a crisis, when you're dealing with something that just came out of the blue, we can feel really resilient, and we can feel like we're equipped to deal with this thing, and we're on an upward curve that says, I can deal with this. There's no issue. I'm doing good. I can handle it. But that's only sustainable for a certain period of time. So the remaining in the critical threshold is really about self-care. Because on that upward journey where we're dealing with the crisis or the challenge or whatever it is, if we are not practicing self-care, well, once we go to the top, if we're not practicing self-care, when we reach our threshold, we are just going to crash and come crashing down. And the self-care aspect of this, so that we can remain in critical threshold, is another way of saying optimal functioning. And sometimes that means that we need to back out and take a break. We need to sometimes reassess. Sometimes we need to find support and ask other people for help. And when we do those things, when we are aware that we can actually give ourselves the time and the space to call in other resources, or give ourselves time, or find other people, whatever it is, instead of coming down in that crash landing, now we've got this stability where we can remain at a high functioning level longer. And instead of crashing, we come in for a softer landing. And if we are required to up our level of functioning again, we can go back to that place, but remaining in that critical threshold or remaining in optimal functioning is really, really important. And when we talk to our clients about self-care, We could take each one of these and just dive into them for hours, because self-care is even misunderstood. You know, everybody, self-care is often thought of in the macro. Well, I go get a massage once a month, or I go get a facial, or you know, on Friday nights I go into the bathtub with a glass of wine, and that's my self-care. Our clients, some of them are dealing with so much life. They need micro self-care moments. They need to be taught to take a breath. They need to be taught to lower their shoulders. They need to be taught to just let their arms and hands go soft and loose and limp. They need to be taught that soft is safe, slow is safe, steady is safe. This is micro self-care. And most of our clients don't know how to do it. They have no idea what this means, but it is the thing that allows us to be in optimal functioning longer. Self-care, my gosh, that could be a series of sessions just in and of itself. Self-care in the form of movement, in the form of food, in the form of spirituality, in the form of creativity, in the form of relationships, all kinds of things. So awareness that allows us to adapt. R, remain in critical threshold or optimal functioning. The E, Karen, here we get to your embrace and accept reality. So embrace, I had to look up the word so I could get a clear understanding of how Webster's would define it. And in the Webster's dictionary, they use two words for embrace: willingly and enthusiastically. Willingly and enthusiastically. I love this. I love this tweak. This tweak is so powerful because it says, I've got all the power. I am empowered. Accept reality. I really don't like what's going on. Nothing I can do about it. I guess I'll just, whatever. Kind of it's not very enthusiastic. Reality is, we're not changing that. And even by my embracing reality, I'm still not being required to like it. I can embrace it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to like this challenge, but I can embrace it. And especially for us in our business lives, I really had to put this to test and practice it, because accepting the reality where I was at much of the time kept me looking and outside of myself and comparing my business and where I was and what I was doing and how successful I was or how successful I wasn't or whatever outside of myself. When I said, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, I just have a name for it now. When I finally made the switch in my mind and really allowed myself to be present in my experience with what is important for me, building my business the way that it is important to me, the way that speaks to me. That doesn't mean that I can't look beyond me and get ideas and get support. But unless I filter that through my own value system, it's not mine. And I can't do that unless I really embrace where I'm at right now. This embracing also opens up space. And I think that is so important. We need space to explore. What are we exploring? Sometimes we don't know. Mm-hmm. I wrote a note. Michael said something earlier we hope we know what you want. When you were talking, Michael, at the beginning of this, about if you have specific topics or speakers you want to see, we do our best because we hope we know what you want. I had to get to the place where sometimes I don't know what I want. Sometimes I don't know the next best thing, which action to take. And when I embrace the reality that I am in, I feel as if I have space. And I think this is so important because in that space is where magic is possible. It's where possibility lives. In one of my early improv classes, improv is so fascinating because you literally have no idea what is going to be asked of you when you go on stage. You don't know what suggestion you're going to get. You don't know what the other person's thinking, what they're going to do. You are literally creating in the moment. And I asked the instructor, how do you get to that place where you just, you just know what to say without thinking of it beforehand? And his answer was so brilliant. He said, you have to trust that everything that is needed at that time and in that space will be provided. That is so magical to me. And it really speaks to being in life, accepting reality. Again, it just feels different. It feels heavier. And it is this embracing that I just love. Karen?
Even if we look at it in a slightly different way, it occurred to me after listening to you that we can accept a compliment and, oh, isn't that very nice? But if we embrace a compliment, we take it in, we let it fill us up. We get to feel it and own it. We're embracing it. How much cooler is that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It can be the littlest things. It can be your business or anything else. I got stopped at a railroad crossing the other day when I was kind of in a hurry. And it was going to add, about 6 minutes to my day being stopped there. It could have been disastrous. I could have accepted that reality and just been pissed for the whole 6 minutes. But I went, wait. Okay, the reality is I'm here with the train. I've got in reality, about 6 minutes to kill. What can I get done? And that's when I planned my HypnoTip newsletter and used Kelli as my example, because that was when I went, okay, this is a simple, easy, instant way to embrace reality and create a change and make everything feel better. So it was a way that I was using it, even in the smallest of things to the biggest of things. The more we use it, the more we use it.
Yeah. Well, I love that you thought of me while you were sitting at a railroad crossing, Karen.
I think a few other times too, but definitely there alone in the car.
This makes me think of clients that come to us too. And I would assume that most people have had this experience, but maybe not. But sometimes you get the clients that all they really need is a validation that where they are is absolutely okay. Like they think they should be somewhere else. They think they should be beyond this feeling, or it shouldn't be taking this long, or whatever the should is. And when you can present this idea of evolving, because there is an evolving that is going on in each of us, and we're all in such a hurry to get to wherever it is that we're going, that we forget that there is a timing to life. And this timing of life goes far beyond our own personal or internal timing, and that they might just be exactly where they need to be. And maybe it's time to just give up all of the self-dialogue, the internal judging, introduce that loving teacher, as Michael said, and come into this space where they can embrace where I'm at is right where I need to be.
Yeah. If I can just add, I thought that was really interesting to me to notice that Karen stopped by the train, finds something useful to do in that moment. By the way, that good on you. You know, the thing with me that I think is a little different about that is when I'm conscious. I'm not saying I always do this, but when I'm conscious, if I get stopped by the train, I have been was doing just what you were saying, Kelly. That is, I've been rushing to get somewhere, needing to do. This is a gift from the universe that says, "Oh, wait, oh, you mean we can just sit here for a moment?"
Yeah.
I don't need to do anything. I don't, and one of the sort of lessons behind that for me, even that I've had for a long time, comes from show business. And I remember this specifically with Bette Midler. And you might recall that back in her earlier days, Bette was like more energy than you can imagine, on stage at high rates of speed. But about every fourth song or fifth song was a ballad.
Mm.
And it was something that she could almost do in her sleep. So it gave her a chance to step back, was what I heard you say earlier about self-care, to step back, and I'm going to breathe now.
Hmm.
And I'm going to do this thing that I can phone in, and then I'll pull up the energy again for the next set.
Yeah, totally. And this is this is what is so great about the work that we do, because we can really all of us can create techniques. We forget that we all can create techniques. It's great when we go and we learn from other people, but we can all create techniques and use what we have at our disposal. I came up with the technique called the old man on the park bench. If you're interested, at the end, I will teach it to you, because I found it to be very, very beneficial. And it really kind of plays into this idea of resilience. But let's get on with our final letter of the acronym of the area. Access inner resources to support self-regulation. Now, there are the word regulation, and Karen, I have to give you a shout out, because you are somebody who points out the importance of words, that words matter. It is through words that our mind is creating symbolic representations, whether we are aware of them or not. And so this idea of self-regulation, and I talk to people about that. Anxiety, you're here to manage your anxiety? Yeah, okay. I don't know about you, but I only want to manage things I have. My time, my energy, my money. That's what I want to manage. So what if we gave up the idea of anxiety management and elevated that to self-regulation? And people are like, okay. They don't know what that means. And then it goes back to those conversations of the self-care and the breathing and all of the techniques. Self-regulation, to me anyway, implies that already everything I need to self-regulate is already there. Accessing inner resources. What do you have control over? Thoughts, words, feelings, actions. What needs to change right now? Well, what if we just changed your breath? What if you dropped your shoulders? What if you just gave yourself a moment to understand that you can actually elevate out of anxiety management and self-regulation? And again, this idea of self-regulation, it offers such a platform for so many, my gosh, for a whole series of sessions, because these are the things that especially if people are on medication, they're not being taught self-regulation from their psychiatrists. They're not getting this information about movement and breath and all of these things. And that's one of the reasons that they probably haven't seen the kinds of improvement that they've wanted to. So accessing inner resources to support regulation. So there we have our acronym: awareness, remaining in critical threshold, embrace reality, and access inner resource to support self-regulation. And I love the acronym of AREA, because we get to actually point out to people, we have an area. We have an area that is so resilient, and it is our heart. Our heart is this tremendous organ that will not lead us astray. Whereas, the mind can always see both sides of the same coin. It can sometimes provide confusing information and the pros and the cons and the good and the bad and the right and the wrong. But if we can drop down into this area of our heart just for a moment and just be still and allow that loving teacher to come out and remind us, I'm okay. Right now, I am okay. Nothing needs to change right now. I can just take a breath. And giving people the tools to just, and permission and the experience in our offices to really feel this. So I would agree again with Michael too. We do go beyond many of the therapies, because we're giving people the opportunity to actually try this stuff on, to see how it fits, to allow them to already feel successful in it. I'm reminded, I don't know, just by show of hands, has anybody ever had anybody come out of a session and say, well, I'm going to go see if this worked now. I'm going to go see if this worked now. That got me, I did a smoking cessation session with a gal, and she came out of the session and said just that. And I was like, oh gosh, this needs to be addressed. And ever since that time, especially with my clients who are stop smoking clients, we have a long conversation about that phrase, the big if. And because if clients come into your office and then leave saying, well, I'm going to go see if this worked, they're going to test it. And the thing about the test is they're going to pass a couple tests and they're going to be okay. But they're also going to dismiss those successes. They're not going to recognize them as successes. They're going to dismiss them and say, oh, that wasn't hard enough. That wasn't a test. That wasn't hard. I came through with flying colors. And they'll keep up the ante. And the mind will keep going until it finally finds the test that it will fail. And when I point this out to people, say, so instead of testing this isn't a question of if, it is a question of what and how and when. That's it. Which means we are going to reverse engineer your success. Yeah. Because your success does not happen in the future. Your success begins now. And you can look off into the future and know that there is a process that is unfolding where you may be experiencing something different than you are right now. And you have to move through that process because time and space dictate that. But your success begins now. And it's based on the questions, what do I need to do? Who do I need to be? And how do I make that happen right now? Because you only can be successful in this moment of now, and for every moment of now hereafter. This is your place of power. So with that, any thoughts, questions, input?
I'd love to show of hands or whatever you want. I just want to point out that I put in the chat room a link to Kelly's book, which is Redefining Happiness. I wanted to let you know that while you can still see the chat room, because if we wait until the end, we got all of her info on how to contact her. And I told you that half the people would, well, I don't know, about half of you would miss it, but I'm just saying, I want to give you plenty of time to grab it if you want to grab that link. So now, open for questions, open for comments or input.
I have on my notes here, you mentioned that I was a spiritual person, and many times in session work, the idea of doing things perfectly. Anybody have clients who think that they need to do things perfectly?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. I used to belong to that club. I have burned my membership. Until
Well, I bet you
I,
were good at it.
what's
I
that?
I'll bet you were good at it.
I was perfect at it. I was perfect at being perfect. Except I have a new definition for perfection. And I got this from the book is called The Revealing Word. It is a metaphysical dictionary written by Charles Fillmore, who is the co-founder of the Unity movement.
Yeah.
And I was just perusing through different words, and he loves to use metaphors and things. And so his definition of perfection is a state of consciousness without any shadow of negation. And I think that is so beautiful, because to me that says I am willing to accept my perfection. I am now willing to be the person that will no longer tolerate the nasty judge who can be really nasty inside my head. Doesn't mean that she's always quiet, but when she rears her nasty head, I can do what you did, Michael, what you explained, and really understand that there is a good intention behind that, but I need to switch that. I need to switch that voice. I need to switch those phrases. I need to switch those words and start being kind to myself. And it is through that kindness and through that compassion that I do discover my resilience. And we don't have to have all the answers right now.
Yeah.
We don't have to know everything. And that's one of the key things about this idea of adaptive resilience, that there is a level of okayness. I'm not even going to call it comfort. There is a level of okayness with the uncertainty of life. And isn't that, I mean, if we knew everything that was going to happen to us, people say, well, if I just knew what was going to happen to us, well, oh my God, why do I need to be here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelly, what's so nice about that is, and you said it earlier, is that even when we don't know what's going to happen, the idea that faith is what we need. We don't need to know what to do. We need to know that it's going to be okay.
Yes.
There's a teacher that I had a lot of years back used to have this expression. He said, the obvious truth is what is so. It is not so obviously, so what? That there's a place where when we don't like the way that things are, then what we do is we occupy our thoughts and our thinking and our emotions with, I don't like the way things are, which is the stupidest response to reality that one could possibly have.
Yes.
You know, things are undoubtedly the way that they are. And we can make them be really, really terrible by explaining to ourselves just how awful it is at great length, you know, and flailing and waving our arms, or we can go, oh, okay, I got it. Now what?
Well, and that brings such a good point to point out to people, you know, what is reality? How far out do we need to even go? You know, we have this capability of humans to make our reality based completely on the past or jump into a future reality. We can disregard the whole sense of time and what happens when you just become present and let go of everything that is happening out there. And this resilient piece is really so key. And we all know this because our clients have been conditioned to believe that external circumstances, and we've been conditioned to believe, we just have some better information of how to disengage from that. But most people, I think it's safe to say, believe that external circumstances and other people dictate how they feel, how they think of themselves, what they're capable of. And we really do have to start introducing them to these time and space concepts to let them know they're in charge of what's real.
Right. That's right. It's all.
When I hear people thinking that way, I get very, very upset.
Our reality is, I was going to tip you off that I know that answer to what is reality. Obviously, it's my perception. Right? Isn't that true for each of us? Because my reality is the way I see it. And what most people fail to understand is they get to choose what they want to see.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of perfectionists have a hard time thinking about doing anything else. And I like to point out to them that, boy, is that a great skill for a proofreader, because you are filtering everything that comes into you by what's not right, looking for what is not right here. And that is a great skill set for a proofreader. But if you don't happen to be proofreading anything, it's a crappy skill set for lots of other things. Right? And the skill set of filtering information by what is right here is much better. I had a student who was serving at a restaurant, and she liked to talk about, you know, the client, not she didn't like to talk, but she had stories about clients who just hated everything, people who she was waiting on who just hated everything. And she always wanted, but she wanted to go up to some tables, and at the end, rather than say, well, is everything all right? Say, well, was anything all right here tonight? Right? That's the perception, and we all get to choose it.
Yes.
I choose to choose a perception that looks prettier, that looks better, that has a better outcome. We'll write the story as we go.
Yes.
So Kelly, you were talking about giving up perfectionism. You know, we find it sometimes so easy to give up alcohol for dry January for a whole month. We can give up swearing for a certain amount of time. We can give up meat, right? Give up things for Lent. But how could I ever give up my perfectionism? Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that ridiculous? I gave mine up several years ago. It was really rewarding.
Yeah.
I gave Catholicism up for Lent one year. So you get to choose what you want to give up, right?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get us off on a tangent.
No.
All right. Were there any questions tonight?
Hoping we're going to get to hear about the old man in the park bench.
I want to know.
That's right. Yeah.
The park bench.
The old man on the park bench. Yes. It's very quick. So I tell because anybody who is dealing with anxiety, we know they have a very, very difficult time relaxing their bodies. And so I just have them imagine an old man on a park bench, and somebody said, dead man on a park bench. I said, no, old man on a park bench. That's what we're doing. So you imagine yourself, and you can do this sitting up, standing up, or laying down. But when we do this in my office, people are sitting in a chair. So I have them stretch out their legs in front of them. So you can do that now. Just stretch out your legs in front of you. And I say, and just notice when your feet are really relaxed, that they just kind of splay out. They just kind of flop one to outward. And just notice how those very relaxed feet aren't running. And after you notice that those feet aren't running, and so they are not fleeing, you can pay attention to your hands. And just imagine your hands being soft and loose and limp, as if they were dangling from your wrists. No tension whatsoever. And after you pay attention to your hands, you may notice that they are not fighting, they're not clenching. And so this is just more information for your body to understand that you are safe. And then you pay attention to your shoulders. And an old man on a park bench, his shoulders are going to be dropped down, soft. And I mimic this for him because some people can't do it. You might have to roll your shoulders back a couple times and get used to this idea of them going soft and loose and limp. And as your shoulders drop, you might notice your chin just kind of pulling itself in ever so slightly in a comfortable way, keeping your neck soft. And the old man on the park bench, he's got time. He's not rushing to get anywhere. He's just there to be. And it might so happen that he just dozes off. And when he dozes off, something happens and you will see that the jaw of the old man releases and he makes that funny sleep face. And I know it might seem funny to do that in the office right now here with me, but I'm still going to invite you to drop open that jaw and let it hang, giving yourself permission to make that funny sleep face. Because we only make that face really when we're asleep. So when you make this face, the body understands you must be safe. And if you're safe, nothing disturbing is going on. And when you proactively practice this, it gives you an opportunity to just do a reset, to come into your body, to be present. And you might even think about that thing that was causing anxiety before as you sit here, especially with your jaw hanging open. And you might notice what happens when you think about the thing that used to be causing you anxiety. And if you notice any slight tension, you just go back and you breathe again and release it and let it go and let your shoulders drop further, deeper down, and your jaw drops open more. And you just notice what happens to that thought that was so bothersome. See, because when the body holds a new physicality that doesn't match the previous emotion, well, all kinds of things can change because you decided to take a few moments and be an old man on a park bench. So that is the old man on a park bench technique.
Very nice.
And people really have to practice. It is amazing to see how many people can't do, like they can't do the jaw dropping. They really, really have to practice it, which is telling.
That was lovely. Thank you.
I have to say I'm a little, Kelly, and I hope you'll forgive me for this, but I'm just a little bit disappointed. Because when I read the advertisement for tonight and stuff, and I had spent some time in South America a couple of years ago, in Rio in particular, and I thought that this was going to be a program about adaptive Brazilians. But I embraced what it was, and it was really lovely. So
next time, Michael, next time I will come up with adaptive Brazilians.
Brazilians.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Well,
that makes an entirely different technique. I'm just saying.
Entirely different. The music is different. The stringed instruments, for example. And
yes.
Kelly, before we forget, how do we get in touch with you if they want to contact you?
Kelly, Kelli @ kellivon.com. So that's KELLI at KELLIVON.com.
Thank you for sparing us the spelling of your last name.
Yes. Yes. Thought it would be easier.
So this was a lovely night tonight. What I do want to remind you guys of is, please don't go away yet, Kelly, because we want to give you a brilliant send off. But I want to remind you that tomorrow night is the presenters series, another in the series of presenters series. And tomorrow night, Michael, do you know
Is
who?
Shelley Stockwell will be the first half hour, and she's talking about mindfulness. And the second half hour is Jacqueline Leclerc on past life regression. So it should be a fun-filled and packed evening. So please be there.
That'll be fun. And of course, this will show up again if you want to go back and catch the acronym or any of the park bench stuff. It will be on the Facebook page and IACT IMDHA forum. You get CEUs for joining us. So IACT and IMDHA for sure. I know that all other friendly associations, ICBCH and IHF, others will give you CEUs. Most friendly organizations will give you the time that we spent too. Kelly, it was just great. I just love this stuff, and I'm using it and adapting every day. So thank you very much for sharing.
Yes, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for spending your evening with me.
Parting
Well,
words?
and now, oh, I'm sorry. Are you ready, Karen?
Yeah, I said, do you have parting words?
Oh, no, I was just going to say now, if everybody will open up their microphones, Kelly has given us all a thanks, but I think we need to give her one back. So in a
I
great
do too.
wave of love and affection, open your microphones and
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Greatly appreciate it.
Kelly.
Thank
Great
you.
program.
She will not be joining us at the IAC conference, unfortunately, but she will have a couple of presentations at the HypnoThoughts conference in July, if you're interested in checking that out.
Yes,
And next year, we might hound her just enough to join us at IACT in Orlando as well.
there you go. All right.
Good
Night,
night. Thank
everyone.
you very much.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.